Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing on Talk 910, the show where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and I'm proud to have as my co-host Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money, California's fastest growing mortgage investment firm, and Rob Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Write that number down, 888-912-1190, because you're going to use that number to answer the trivia questions or 3 vacations given away during each commercial break. That's right, we're giving away 9 vacations during this show. Now, the vacations are not sponsored by the radio station, but by Lighthouse Resort and Marina, which is located 1 hour northeast of San Francisco. The vacations are free. Their only request is a $75 cleaning fee to cover housekeeping expenses. Check out their website at lighthouseresortandmarina.com. And you can also reach them if you need to at 916-777-5511. Today's trivia theme, which I think we did back in December of 2012, and we're going to do it again. The movie Dances with Wolves.
Oh, I'll be really good at it this time.
Yeah. Dances with Wolves. My wife pronounces it wolves.
Yes, she's from Central Valley or something.
Well, our website is bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube by typing Best of Investing Radio Show. And of course, we're also on television. Lately, people have been seeing Mark hanging around somewhere, and they go, "Hey, haven't I seen you on TV?" Oh, yes, you have.
Indeed.
Comcast Channel 26 and AT&T 99 on Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 6 p.m. And Robert Spinoza, you got an interesting article. Sure.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit offline. The headline is Mortgage Closing Costs Soar More Than 20% in Some States. This is something that I think speaks to the larger environment that we're experiencing out there right now with the increased regulation. And I think a lot of lenders saw the writing on the wall with this because all of us, I work for RPM Mortgage here in the Bay Area of California, and we've had to implement a lot of compliance measures, and we have compliance people on staff now, and you got to pay for those folks somehow, and it's all being passed on to the consumer. So a lot of the consumer protection measures have made it so that lenders don't have a choice but to staff up and protect themselves against legal recourse. You basically have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau out there. They have unchecked power, and if they come in and audit you, the penalties can be extremely severe. They can basically put you out of business. So
that's a pretty severe penalty.
Yeah, you've got to take all the necessary steps. You've got to make sure all of your mortgage loan originators are doing things that are compliant from start to finish, meaning from advertising all the way through closing and beyond closing.
I mean, how does the consumer know that, though?
How does the consumer know what?
That they're following all the rules.
Well, I don't think in this picture the consumer knows a whole lot, and then I think that's the irony of all of this legislation is that when you have these layers of disclosures and all of these contradictory waiting periods that intertangle, all this stuff, all it does is it just tunes the consumer out. I mean, I go to signings for my clients, they're happy to be working with me and they trust me, which is a good thing, but they're really signing what's put in front of them at that point. There's no way they can interpret all of the disclosures, and you'll hear the escrow officer say, this is the same thing expressed a different way. Well, why do we need to do that? Because everybody's covering their own compliance perspective on a different, on the same aspect of the deal.
So getting back to the article, mortgage closing costs soaring and they're being passed along to the consumer. So, we're both mortgage loan originators. I do hard money loans.
Right.
You do conventional loans.
Mm-hmm.
I know what costs we charge to the borrower, which is basically an origination fee, which we tell them up front, and
Mm-hmm.
then a documentation and processing fee, which we tell them up front.
Yep.
And then there's title and escrow, which we don't really have control over, but that's generally fairly predictable based on the size of the loan. So in your situation, on the conventional side, which is really the hardest hit from all the Dodd-Frank regulations, are there any specific costs, or is it just that you build it into the rate and the
it's a great question, and our fees are, we basically only charge a processing and an underwriting. That's the only thing you really pay with RPM from the lender side. You pay for your appraisal, but that technically is third party, and then like you said, you pay for title and escrow, which is again third party. But where we see this regulation passed along at the end of the day is in the consumer's rate. And that's the most unfortunate because that's the one that sticks with them over time that they pay for many times over. And there is such a much more efficient way to do all of this. I'll give you an example. when you take a lot of the way loans are structured these days, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have what are known as loan level price adjustments. Mark, you probably know something about this too.
Yep.
What that means is they take all of the risk factors that go into pricing a loan, and they used to break all of those out. So when we looked at a rate sheet, you would add those things up, they're cumulative, and you would add them up, and then you would come up with the consumer's rate. Well, now what happens due to the regulation is it says that if you disclose those, if you're a bank like RPM and you disclose those to your loan officers, they become part of the 3% points and fees cap. So you are handcuffed and blindfolded at the same time, because when you don't disclose it to your loan officers, then it doesn't do that. And what that ultimately is getting at is the fact that when your points and fees exceed 3%, you now have a non-QM. You don't have a qualified mortgage anymore. You have a higher priced mortgage loan. And these are not things that traditionally would have been passed on to the consumer anyway. But it's putting the lender in a situation now where it's being built into the price because the loan officer cannot identify those things easily, and they cannot adjust the consumer's program and structure accordingly because they feel by giving us that knowledge we could abuse it and harm the consumer. So it really goes around and around, again, penalizing the ethical brokers at the expense of those that did harm years ago.
So let me guess. Dodd-Frank comes along, passes hundreds of new laws designed to protect the consumer from the predatory banking community, and lo and behold, the cost to the consumer actually goes up. Who'd have thunk?
Yeah, and actually who it hurts most, again, with more irony, who it hurts most are those at the lower end of the spectrum loan amount wise, because you have a set percentage, 3%. It goes down, the allowance goes up as the loan amount goes smaller and smaller still. But if you're a loan officer, I've got for example, a client who lives in the Central Valley. His loan amount's very small. Refinancing his loan would be highly effective for him. But if he uses our model, which is based on our average loan size here in the Bay Area, he'll trip the high point or higher cost mortgage test right out of the gate. So I can't originate his loan even though I want to, and even though it helps him, he has to probably work with someone that's located in that area.
Just give him more money.
Yeah.
Make it 180% of loan.
You know what this is really going to hurt is when...
That's helping the consumer.
We've talked about this, Rob, before. If you go back 30 years and look at the average cost of a mortgage, it hovers right there somewhere around 6%, not including the high highs and in the last 10 years of low lows. And so, when the prime rate, goes back up again, and it will, and again, the historical prime rate average is also right around that 6% rate. So we get back to a 6% prime. That's when these added costs and fees to the banking community to actually produce this loan are really going to start to hurt. And
well, yeah, because they're not a percentage; they're a dollar amount.
Right. And the other thing about this too, when you look at some of these scenarios. I was talking before about loan level price adjustments. I had a scenario not too long ago where the person was buying a home, they were getting a first and a second, a piggyback combination on, okay? And this was before we were restricted from looking at the loan level price adjustment. So when I pulled up their rate sheet, what I noticed was that if I lowered the first mortgage amount by $1,000, it brought their loan to value under 75% on the first mortgage. And when I increased their second mortgage to $1,000 higher, then the structure reduced the rate on their first mortgage, which was by far the larger of the two mortgages, by 0.25%. So Dodd-Frank basically says, unless I'm savvy enough to know that may exist, and I play around with my pricing engine to find it, that would have never happened in today's day and age. So that consumer would have walked away for 30 years with a rate 0.25% higher than he could have had he not adjusted his loan amount by $1,000 either way. Wow. So that's there are real-world consequences to this. And again, it's because they're not allowing the people who are professionals. I say regulate the professionals. Make sure we meet certain tests. That's fine, but don't regulate the whole industry. Hands down and with blindfolds.
So it sounds like you need to get a good mortgage broker who can figure that out.
Absolutely, you need someone in your corner who's really going to know this stuff and look out for it.
When we come back, we'll talk some more and you can give out your information.
Absolutely.
How people get a hold of you.
Happy to help.
Okay, we're going to cut to the first commercial break, and again, the theme is Dances with Wolves. Ready?
Yep.
Now it's an old movie. My goodness gracious, 20 years ago or something. Okay, what was the name of the wolf who befriended Kevin Costner? Remember, he named him. Woof woof.
Oh, I think I know this.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The first three callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What was the name of the wolf who befriended Kevin Costner in the movie Dances with Wolves? Make sure to include your name and your email address. Speak slowly. Spell out your email one letter at a time. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back.
2 socks?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, never would have guessed that. As opposed to Tupac.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't Tupac.
It was Mr. Shakur.
Okay, now that I have my coffee, the next segment should get progressively
There
better.
you go.
Yes.
Jump over to Mark's article.
Well, I think I'll continue on with just some of the other impacts that we're seeing in mortgage loan origination, just as an FYI, of just kind of monitoring what's happening in the real estate market.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. A quick text, always good.
Welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hanf of Pacific Private Money and Rob Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question about the movie Dances with Wolves. What was the name of the wolf who befriended Kevin Costner?
Tupac.
Tupac Shakur. No.
It's 2 socks.
2 socks.
That was
Yes.
close.
That's I guess he got that from Dr. Seuss, right? You know, 2 socks, 1 sock, 2 socks.
Yeah.
Never mind. Okay. Mark, take it away.
Well, we are a little bit real estate related in the best of investing here, and we started off the first segment talking about cost to consumers on mortgage loan origination in this new market of ours. And I just wanted to point out almost a glaring statistic, and this goes back to the first quarter of 2014. But we've been talking about mortgage loan origination. In fact, the fact that refinances are really a thing of the past right now. Well, here's a number that's fairly glaring, and this is California numbers. California refinances in the first quarter of 2014 were down 74% year over year from 2013. So that's really dried up. That really affects obviously the income for an industry that's been fairly significant in the state, and that's your friendly neighborhood mortgage loan originator. And I know that a lot of people, I think, unfairly have blamed mortgage loan originators in general for much of what happened in the run-up in the real estate bubble, which I think a lot of that is unfair, because I think it was a very small percentage of mortgage loan originators and a small number of banks, i.e. Countrywide, that were contributing to the hysteria of the real estate bubble, and it really is unfair to blame the mortgage loan originators market. But here we are in this new world. It's 2014. We've got all these regulations going, and so refinances are down. Well, what about the rest of them? What about purchase loans? How's that doing? Well, those are also less than what the market had predicted would be occurring at this point, as we're now halfway through 2014. And here's just a very short article that says that the main cause of rejection in a mortgage loan application today is what's called DTI, which stands for debt to income ratio. That is how much your monthly debt costs are as a percentage against the income you make. That is all about this new idea. It really shouldn't be a new idea, but this idea called the ability to repay. And so now, nowadays, and it used to be this in the olden days before money got free and easy in the late 90s and the early 2000s, ability to repay always was a fundamental concept in making a loan to somebody. Do you have the ability to make the monthly payments? And if there's a balloon, do you have the ability to make the balloon payment? Do you have a strategy for it? So now we have this requirement. It's absolutely required in a bank loan to a consumer that the lender do a calculation or the broker do a calculation of the borrower's ability to repay. And among the things you do is you do this DTI, or debt to income calculation. And so that now has turned out to be the number one cause of rejection, which really shouldn't be all that surprising, given that that's,
What caused the
That's-
2008 crash?
it really did. Giving loans to people who had no,
Well,
business getting a loan.
Mobility
well,
to-
yes, but I think those 2 points those 2 stats that Mark brought up are tied together. One of them is the refinancing stat, and the other one is the debt to income stat. And I'll tell you how I'm going to tie them together. First off, I'd like to say that while the music played, everybody danced. Okay, so if we're talking about Countrywide and mortgage loan originators and everybody Wall Street, back then that's what was happening. To pin it on mortgage loan originators squarely, I think, is very unfair. But
Sure.
okay. What I was going to say, when you start looking at debt to income, when you start looking at refinancing, one of the misconceptions that people had during the run-up was that you could always refinance out of debt that was, from the get-go unaffordable. And that premise is something that doesn't exist now, and it's not promoted now because almost all loans are fully documented loans. That brings us to Mark's point about debt to income. Now that everything's fully documented, now that we've seen your tax returns, now that we've audited your tax returns with a 4506T form executed through the IRS, what do we have left? Now that we've eliminated your ability to use border income and we're not accepting your wife on the loan because her credit score, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, do you meet 43% debt to income? Because that's the gold standard that they've arbitrarily set for the industry.
Which is actually kind of high if you think about it.
It's high relative to the history of mortgage lending, but here's what's funny about that stat. If you take a 43% debt to income ratio and you make that a hard and fast stop for a qualification, you tell me what's a stronger loan to make. You go 80% loan to value with a 2.99% debt to income ratio. That's a qualified loan. But you go 50% loan to value with a 43.01 and you can't get approved. But any investor would tell you that your equity position in the loan is so much stronger in the second scenario. So, you've got to be sensitive to all that in the
No, I
grand
was thinking
scheme.
about just in general living expenses.
Yes,
To just
yes.
say 43%. It used to be 34% years
Right.
ago.
33 over 38 was an old ratio, to even lower than that on the housing portion, and that dovetails with what our parents used to tell us. You can own or afford a home 3 times what you make in a year. That's 33% housing ratio, right?
They
there.
Well, that would never fly today.
Never fly in the Bay Area, right?
Do they look at the gross?
Yes, your gross monthly income.
Well, gee, you take out all the taxes and
Well,
you're behind the 8 ball to begin
You
with.
pay
again.
taxes?
Yeah.
No, right.
So what's a poor bank to do? They've got all these new restrictions. The number of loans they're writing are lower. In fact, a survey of banks actually confirmed that due to all these new regulations, it's caused banks to cut back on lending. So, what are some of the larger banks like the B of A's and the Wells? What are they doing? Well, here's another article from this week, exclusive. It says Wells Fargo looses standards for jumbo mortgages, which is an important product, of course, in the Bay Area. Jumbo
Very
mortgage is what many of us need when we buy a home here today. Now, before you start thinking, there we go, we're going back to subprime again. All they did was lower the FICO score that they require on a jumbo loan, the minimum FICO score, from 720 to 700. So that's really not opening the floodgates of opportunity. In fact, there's a quote in here from a Wells Fargo employee that says, "The talk about returning to subprime is just nonsense." So,
and I think that any of these things by themselves can be acceptable risk factors for making a loan. So I think a 700 FICO score can be perfectly safe if it's coupled with a loan to value that's sound, and it's coupled with a debt to income ratio that's low enough. Where you start to get into trouble is where you either don't identify the risk, which is a stated income loan, or you start to couple the credit score with a higher loan to value and perhaps a high debt ratio.
Yeah, but here's something. What do the banks? They've got to look at where your income comes from too.
Right.
But I know that if you've only been in a job for 6 months, that doesn't look as good as 10 years.
Correct.
And also, the type of income. What do you do for a living? Oh, I embezzle from my employers.
Well,
I report it on my tax return.
Well, of course, we at Pacific Private Money, we do hard money loans, but when we make a loan to a consumer, we also, which is not really well known now to many people in the public, that we also have to adhere to the
ATR.
ATR,
Yeah.
the ability to repay calculations. And so I have a 30-page document from our attorney that shows us how to make a consumer loan and the ways to, what we have to go through in order to come up with an ability to repay
Yeah.
decision. And there are 8 factors, and I would not bore you to tears by giving you even one of those 8 at this point, but there are lots of
But
different
they
ways.
speak to what you were talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
Yeah.
So there are ways to do it, but I mean, that's the world we live in now. It's going to be that way until somebody takes over control of Congress and repeals some of that stuff.
It's going to be that
And
way
it could happen.
for a bit, and not all of it is bad, again, but I think that the way it's implemented will have a greater impact than actually what it is in legislation. So that's yet to be seen. A lot of the lawsuits, there have been some, but not enough yet to make all lenders adhere to a single approach towards this. And we'll have to see where it goes.
All right, we're going to cut to our second commercial break. When we come back, we've got some interesting emails for our co-hosts here. Here's our second trivia question again regarding the movie Dances with Wolves. What was the name of the leader of the Indian tribe? Okay, the first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190. What's that number?
888-912-1190.
Very good, you've been listening. To answer this question, in the movie Dances with Wolves, what was the name of the leader? Remember, he was the old guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to think of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Of the Indian tribe. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back.
3 socks.
3 socks.
Yeah, like
that's a
an
good one. Yeah, the wolf's only worth 2 socks. It's worth 3 socks. Okay, I couldn't ask easy questions.
No, that's a good one. I don't know the answer to that one. Man, they are getting tough in underwriting with this. I have a deal where I think they're buying kind of a rundown house and they are going to remodel it. Underwriter came back just now and she said they're going to do a owner occupancy check 60 days after close.
Oh my gosh.
Good. Well, you know what? I mean, that's awesome from Mark. I mean, sorry for I'm sorry for you, but it's not your fault. It's just it is what it is.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know what their plans are, but I'm sure it involves doing something in that place.
I keep hearing conflicting information. Are you guys doing loans, not from RPM, but just in general? Is it true that you can't do loans that would be ultimately sold to Fannie Freddie with a foreclosure less than 7 years?
7 years foreclosure, yeah.
Okay.
I actually, you know what? Let me give you this because
So it is 7 years still. So I thought it was
Yeah,
3 or 4.
No, you're thinking of short sale. That just
Yeah.
changed.
Oh, okay.
Short sale was 2 years with a 20% down payment, and they
Yeah.
moved that to 4
Oh, more restricted.
on conforming. So FHA is your best way back in after a short sale because they'll
So
go
I'm
3 years.
going to hit 5 years in January, and it's just.
You are actually, you could go jumbo on our Barclays product. They have a 3-year on a short sale.
On a foreclosure. 'Cause I had
Not a foreclosure.
yeah, I had a. Did I say short sale? I meant foreclosure. Right?
No, you said foreclosure. I changed it.
Yeah, I had a primary residence foreclosure. So.
So that's across all of our investors.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Kahn and Rob Spinoza. When we get to the second commercial break, we ask this trivia question again. The theme is Dances with Wolves. What was the name of the leader of the Indian tribe?
3 socks.
3 socks. No. if the wolf is worth 3 socks, the leader's worth 3 socks. Mark.
I don't know.
10 bears.
Ah, okay. Well, we were.
He's worth 10 bears.
Yeah.
Instead.
I would have gotten there eventually.
Okay. That's true. Eventually you would have. Okay, email time. Mark, if interest rates rise, will the interest rate you pay your investors in the fund rise? You have to kind of give us some background about all that.
Sure. Well, the answer is yes. And so at Pacific Private Money, we have a mortgage pool fund that we use to fund many of the loans we make at Pacific Private Money to people who have fallen out or can't qualify for bank financing, or maybe they're an investor doing a short-term fix and flip loan. Again, banks are generally not making short-term loans, and generally not making loans to real estate investors right now anyway, even though I bet that's probably going to change sometime in the future, since we've been talking about how loan origination has been going down in the wake of all of this. But notwithstanding what the banks may or may not do in the future, at Pacific Private Money we have a very, very large pipeline of loan applications. In fact, last year summer was kind of quiet. Looking back on the volume, and this year it's just we're on fire. The phone hasn't stopped ringing, which is good for us. But what it really means is it's really the result of bank qualifications being so much more difficult. More and more people are finding they can't rely on the bank to close that real estate transaction that they want to do, and as a result, they're coming to companies like Pacific Private Money and other private money and hard money lenders in order to see if there's a way.
No, they're just coming to you.
They're just
Yeah.
mostly coming to Pacific Private Money. So we have a mortgage pool fund that we use to fund those loans, and right now that fund is paying on average just under 8.5% to the investors of the fund, and that rate is that payout is based on the amount we're able to charge to the consumer. So to the borrower, whether it's a consumer or a real estate investor or for business purpose, it all depends on the rate. So rates in the Bay Area for a private money loan 5 years ago on average would have been about 12%.
Okay.
And then over the last 5 years they've come down. They've gone from 12 to 11 to 10 and now sometimes 9. So the blend of the loans that we have and the note rates that we have in our portfolio after expenses are able to produce a yield to our investors of about 8.5% right now.
And that's if they take the monthly distribution. If they reinvest back in the fund, it's closer to 9, isn't it?
The actual payout on a monthly basis is closer to 8.25. On a compounded basis, it's close to about 8.5.
8.5, I see.
I mean, it's over 8, and if you don't think 8% is just a great return on your money for an incredibly well secured investment with safety and security features that you don't see in the stock market or many other investments, then I want to know where you're investing your money.
Well, yeah, because I've had my IRA now with you for
better part of a year.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And just like clockwork, check comes
That's
in
pretty
every
nice.
month.
Yeah.
Well, we're just next week we do the distributions for July. July was another good month, and August is looking to be a stellar month. So again, the answer to the question is as interest rates go up, the rates we charge borrowers will go up. They may go back up to that 11 or 12% if prime over the next couple of years starts hiking back up from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. Because we generally have a spread in the industry. There's usually a spread between what bank financing rates are and what private money rates are. Now that spread is actually higher today than it was historically. So when I first got in the business, the spread was about 6%.
Yeah, that's interesting.
On average. It's
Closer to 7.5.
yeah.
Well, here's what I find kind of interesting is, a lot of people might look at your fund similar to a bond fund because it's income oriented, not growth oriented.
Right.
But on a bond fund, if interest rates go up, you start losing principal.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you start giving back some of that interest. In fact, you can go negative. Mark, as I understand it, the loans that you do are fairly short term, and there is no principal risk from that end of it from an interest rate standpoint.
Well, you can never say no. And I try to avoid using the words, "Hey, it's safe," because if you want to talk about safe, you're really talking about U.S. government bonds and such.
Well, not in bonds because you have interest rate
You have
risk.
interest rate risk
I
there
mean,
too.
you're talking about like short-term T-bills,
Right.
like 1 week T-bills.
Right.
Yeah, they're safe. But what are they paying? Like 0.00001%.
But getting back to the safety and security nature of the investment in our mortgage pool fund, it is, you could describe it like a mutual fund of mortgage-backed
Right.
notes. So they're promissory notes, almost identical to the ones that the banks issue when you get a bank loan. There really is no fundamental difference between our promissory notes that we make to borrowers and the ones that the banks make to the borrowers. That we use the same software, in fact. It's secured by a deed of trust, the same type of deed of trust that you would sign if you got a loan from any of the major banks. So therefore, we've got a pool of mortgage-backed notes, and
Right.
what's different about our mortgage pool is that our weighted average loan to value, meaning the value of the loans as it relates to the value of the real estate at the time the loan was made, is at a weighted average of 61% right now. And what's interesting about a lot of the loans we make is that we make them to real estate investors who buy property that improve it.
Mhm.
And by the time they
Right.
get it on the market for resale, the effective loan to value of that specific loan is often less than 50%. It might have started out at 70% of the purchase price that we
Right.
gave them a loan for. Now there's a value of 45 or 50%.
Would it be appropriate to ask the borrower? I mean, I know you're not going to force them to get a new appraisal after you've done the loan, but I wonder if you can get like a broker opinion,
Broker price opinion.
Thank you, a BPO.
Yep.
So that in your fund you can maybe say based
Oh,
on
right.
BPO, it's now at 48% or something. Is that appropriate?
I guess it could be. I know that there are some types of mortgage pools that are forced to, on an annual basis, come up with valuations on effective valuations for the collateral. Now we go through an annual audit, but that audit doesn't require us to get current value appraisals on
So that would
unless
be
it's a non-performing loan. So we have no non-performing loans because the loans we've been making have been short-term in nature to people who have demonstrated an aptitude and or maybe they're an experienced or even a repeat borrower of our company over the years. And so we've never seen stronger loan applications than we have now.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
That's
Yeah.
really the
Well,
bottom line
it's
is
because the banks are still,
Yeah.
Well, we're seeing the same thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
hard
it's-
money.
Yeah.
Hard money 15 years ago was oftentimes it was a borrower who was, basically back up against the wall, in
Right.
trouble, had some equity in some property.
Loan of necessity, not
Right.
a choice.
Loan of last resort,
Yeah,
loan of
yeah.
necessity. It was to a distressed borrower. Well, we really don't make loans today, at least at Pacific Private Money, we don't make loans to distressed borrowers. Now, they may have a damaged FICO score from a foreclosure or maybe a bankruptcy from 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but that doesn't mean they're distressed. It doesn't mean they're in trouble and they're out of money and they need this otherwise, to pay for food. That's not the kind of loans we make. We're making loans to borrowers who, for many different reasons, don't qualify for a bank loan. It doesn't mean they're in distress. It just means they're not bank financeable. But oftentimes they're great borrowers.
Yeah.
They make good money. They've got experience, and they're gonna buy this property. They're gonna execute a strategy, whatever that might be, or maybe it's just simply improving the property and sell it.
And sometimes your loans are safer because you will ask for additional collateral that the bank would not have required.
Oh, we do a lot of loans where we get additional collateral where, if we think, that there's something about the deal that we're not comfortable with, we say, well, we're not comfortable with the deal as presented, but if you own other real estate with
Cross
equity,
collateralize it.
then we'll cross collateralize, meaning
Yeah.
that'll be part of the deal.
He's a legal loan shark, not a barracuda, but shark. All right, we're going to cut to our third and final commercial break. When we come back, we have a good question here from a listener for Rob.
Okay.
Well, one more thing.
For more information,
there you
just
go.
in case you're interested at all in how we make our money, or if you're sitting on some money, or maybe you're selling some stock because maybe you believe that the market might be at the top and could be due for a correction, and you want to reposition some of your investment income and savings, give us a call, Pacific Private Money. We're in the Bay Area at 415-883-2150. That's 415-883-2150, or visit our website at pacificmoneyfund.com. All one word, of course, pacificmoneyfund.com.
All right, thank you very much. Third and final commercial break trivia question. Again, the theme is Dances with Wolves. What was the Indian name of the woman Kevin Costner marries? And if that's too easy, you got to give us her height, her weight, her birth date, and her social security
Batting
number.
average.
Her batting average, yeah. The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse Resort. Obviously, we only are asking
Crazy
seriously
eyes.
for just the name of the Indian woman.
All right.
Okay, who Kevin Costner marries. And if you remember, she was actually born a white
Right.
girl, but she got taken in by the Indians,
Right.
and she has a different name. Call 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What was the name of the Indian woman Kevin Costner marries in the movie Dances with Wolves? Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back.
I actually forget that one. Isn't that the real life
I liked her
Sacagawea
better.
though?
She's a pretty girl.
I like
She
it
was.
better on Babylon 5. But,
Oh, she was.
was it Babylon 5 or was it?
Or the Cosby Show? Which one? I used to watch that all the time.
Battlestar Galactica. That's the one she was on. She was on Battlestar.
What was she?
Wasn't that all full of hot women?
She was.
Howard Stern always used to talk about that show. I never
Oh,
saw it.
really?
So in Battlestar Galactica, the robots that humanity had created that had left Earth to go, they had become sentient. They left the Earth to go populate their own planet. 100 years later, they come back and they bomb the shit out of Earth, killing most humans, and including the president of the world or United States or whatever. And so this woman, she was in the order of hierarchy, she was like secretary of something, and now she's president of the human race, and that was part of the storyline of Battlestar Galactica.
Do you ever think about like computer science and how the processing chip is getting smaller and smaller and more powerful, that eventually it'll end up as a brain cell?
Oh, it will.
You know, it's like, because if you look at the
not only do I think about it, it scares the crap out of me.
yeah, it is the Terminator, right?
No,
It's like
Terminator.
the beings be, you know,
The day computers go sentient and wipe us
Right.
out.
That's
These
true.
gnats anyway.
All right. Here we go. Welcome back to The Best of Investing. Last time, I'm Edward Brown, your host. Now, this is last time just for the show, not forever. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Knopf and Rob Spinoza. When we cut to the, you keep waving to the camera, there you go. When we cut to the third and final commercial break, we asked this trivia question about the movie Dances with Wolves. What was the Indian name of the woman Kevin Costner marries?
I should remember it, but I did like her better on Battlestar Galactica.
and I can't think of it. I'm at a loss.
Stands with a fist.
Oh,
That's right.
Ah, gotcha on that one. Okay. Now, Rob, we
Yes.
have an email we received from you. It says, "Are there any stated income loans anymore? I am
Oh.
self-employed and my income fluctuates a lot."
Good question. We, for those of you who were listening earlier in the show, we covered this somewhat comprehensively. The reason there are not, by and large, stated income loans, and I do see advertisements for them, as I'm sure most people do. We get email newsletters from different banks saying they offer them. But the real deal with stated income is it inherently fails the ability to repay test. So you cannot have a stated income loan that is a qualified mortgage. That puts lenders who make any type of loan that the income is not documented or otherwise notated where you're giving evidence of an ability to repay, it puts the lender at great risk.
Wait, okay. So in the old days, stated income was just I'm stating my income.
Correct.
And what did I have to use to back that up?
Well, you didn't need to do anything on that, and that was
Like
the
a
issue.
note from my mother that says I make $1 million a
Well,
year.
but what happens there, if you're really, the banks that were making stated income loans when they made sense, and what they were doing is they charged additional for them. There was a risk premium, of course, but what they were not is they were not stated employment loans. So in other words, they could verify that you work. You said you're a doctor, a self-employed doctor. Your income fluctuates, but your practice is in existence. And if they called that phone number, they weren't getting, this number's been disconnected. So,
that's a lot of good
You're
verification.
right. So there were ways to know, but what we all think of as stated income is where it's a liar loan. You're saying I make $20,000 a month, but you're working in a capacity that would possibly earn you $4,000 a month. So those type of loans are gone. And the reason they're gone is because if the lender is put back at risk, if any of those borrowers came back with a foreclosure defense against that lender, they could easily state, I did not document an ability to repay that loan. The lender would then have to buy that loan back and make that correct. So that's why stated income loans, for the most part, don't exist. Now, there are some programs that address, and we offer some of these, that are not QM loans, but they look at attributes of the borrower. Let's say you have a 50% loan to value. Well, we're going to look at that loan and that income qualification very differently than if you have an 80% loan to value. If you've got a ton of assets in the bank, we might look at sort of getting an income stream off of that on an annual basis.
Is that subjective, or can you guys make a general assessment, or there's real guidelines?
Yeah, there are real guidelines that it would have to adhere to. We're going to use a formula and some banks that will do that. They call it asset amortization. Okay, so you can do that. And then also to the point you brought up about income fluctuations for self-employed borrowers, I do a lot of self-employed borrowers, and what I will tell you about that is don't do that income calculation at home. You may have had a good year and a bad year. We now have a program, we call it Sneak Peek, where it's if you had your last year was strong, but maybe 2012, as reported, wasn't as strong.
Well,
We'll go off that 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to show you, March 28th through May 14th from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m.
You don't get to create your own base
Oh,
there.
okay. Too bad.
But no, what we're getting at is that you don't want to do your income calculation at home. It's best left to a professional. You want someone to look at it and come up with an accurate income number so that you can really find out, do you qualify or not qualify based on what we're using these days as the test and the guidelines.
Yeah, that's what I used to love about the old days in the mutual funds, where this one mutual fund would claim they were the number one fund,
Right.
and you'd literally look at it
The
and
fine
be like
print.
March 23rd. We were number one for the 1 month.
Yeah.
Talk about stated income. I missed the ninja loans, the no income, no job,
No assets. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Ninja loans.
Yeah, there were all different types of that. Nina was no income, no asset. And then you had you could add the no employment element.
How about the NPV? No payback loans. I don't have to pay
Well,
back.
that's what they became.
Yeah,
After the
exactly.
initial period, they became no payback loans.
Okay, so Rob, how do people get a hold of you? Because you've got obviously a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, happy to help. I'm at RPM Mortgage. I work out of the Mill Valley office. Phone number is 415-367-5959. My bio is on the Best of Investing website. All my contact information is there. And if you have any scenarios that have been problematic or that you think you just want to revisit now that we have higher values in a lot of the Bay Area, give me a call. I'm happy to talk more about it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if someone's from Danville.
Not at all. Not at all. All of California's game. So if you're listening on iHeartRadio, give me a call. I'm happy to help.
Very good.
Yeah.
Mark, you have another couple of articles you want to share with us?
I do. And so, we've been talking the last several months in this show about, where are home prices headed? And so, again, scouring the blogs and looking to see what others out there are saying, came across a blog post that said, could the home price boom be ending? Now, this is, we've talked about a number of predictions about maybe home prices are overvalued. In fact, there is a report written by a person at Bank of America Merrill Lynch that said, that presupposed that home prices are currently about 10% overvalued. But the interesting thing about this article is that this is really not the majority view, and that is really true. So here's a couple of different aspects to demonstrate that. And here they're saying, they're not giving me a number in this one. They're going to give you a number in the other one. Most economists predict that home prices will rise about 5% this year and keep rising about 5% over the next few years. Now, this is a national average. This is a California number. Here's a better one that gives what I think are clearer statistics, titled Home Prices, Where Are They Heading? And this is based on a nationwide survey of over 100 economists, real estate experts, what those guys are, and investment and market strategists.
A lot of eye rolling going on here.
About where prices are headed over the next 5 years. And they average those projections from all of the 100 plus experts into a single number. And so here's what they say. Home values will appreciate by nearly 5% this year, and that the cumulative appreciation over the next 5 years, actually, 2014 through 2018, will be about 20%.
Nice.
Which again would be an average of just under 4% over that next 5 years. And it says even the experts making up the most bearish of those surveyed are still projecting cumulative growth over the next 5 years of over 10%. So, here they say, if individual opinions make headlines, we believe that this survey is a fairer depiction of likely future values.
I want to add one thing about all this. I think it's very easy for people to think, we're headed for another bubble just because we've seen some appreciation. So, of course, you get people who are pessimistic and say, this has got to be another bubble. Let me give you one very important reason why I don't see it as a bubble based on what we saw last time. Last time, the buyer pool was tremendous because you had a lot of loan programs that accommodated people who couldn't otherwise qualify, and they were able to buy houses they couldn't otherwise afford, okay? Those are all out of the equation this time around. You have a lot of people buying all cash. You've got anywhere from 30 to 40% of buyers out there buying all cash, at least in California. Every single loan that goes through the conventional loan channel is a fully documented loan. I mean, these are not people that are apt to walk away based on their fundamentals. So that's who's buying these houses. That's who's pushing these prices up, and it's not the same game as it was last time around. So I tend to think that in that stat somewhere is the organic appreciation rate that we'll actually see, and I think it's going to be, pretty healthy. I have no reason to believe otherwise.
Well, also, if it goes up 4 or 5%, that's probably pretty healthy.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, a lot of the projections I do are based on 2 or 3% appreciation a year. I mean, and we've got
and that may feel like a flat market, but really
Right.
it's not. For those who own real estate, particularly leveraged real estate,
Yeah, of course,
appreciation
yeah.
of 2, 3, 4% a year. Do the math. I mean, the leverage will actually cause your equity to increase a lot faster than
sure,
that. Now you're talking about double-digit appreciation of your equity.
Yep, exactly. All right, guys, we're going to catch all our thoughts in the day here.
Sure.
All right, you ready for this?
Yep.
Okay, here's more of a question. What's the most shoplifted item in the U.S. is?
The Bible.
Liquor.
Candy.
Huh, okay.
Now, in Europe, what is it?
Double cappuccinos.
Close. It's cheese. There's another cheese. Here we shoplift good stuff like Oreo cookies
Right.
and all that.
Snickers bars.
They're doing Limburger cheese. Okay, now that explains a lot. All right, and get this: San Francisco 49ers coach Jim Harbaugh once played Screech's cousin on a 1996 episode of Saved by the Bell. That also explains a lot. I don't know how they got him to play. 96. He was still playing for the Bears, I think.
No, maybe. No.
He's still getting yelled
Football
at
star.
by Ditka for calling an audible. You remember that one? Oh my goodness! He called an audible one time, threw an interception, ran back for a touchdown, and he goes to the sidelines, and Ditka
boy.
just takes the clipboard and smashes it down, and don't you ever call a blink, blink, blink audible again. All right, fans out there, tune in. Football is ready to come back, isn't it? Tune in next week to the Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.
It's fun.
Okay.